Good afternoon, or if you are in the Southern Hemisphere, good morning. And yeah, thanks for joining me. And I think I might be the first New Zealander on the TigerStream series. So I'd like to thank Matt and the team at Auburn Stormwater for inviting me on to this webinar. And in addition, a big congratulations to Auburn Stormwater for cleaning up at the recent IECA Annual Conference Awards in Fort Worth. I also want to thank those who have tuned in from around the world. I was told someone from Australia was tuning in as well, and it will be the early hours of the morning for them. So I hope they have a coffee in hand. But before we dive in, I should probably give you a small translation warning. I am from New Zealand, and we've got some phrases that don't always land smoothly in the US. So if you're in my talk in Fort Worth, I have used this before, but the term sweet as, I've said to an American friend of mine, and he very politely replied, thanks, yours is pretty good too. So if anything I say today sounds slightly questionable, don't worry, it's probably just a Kiwiism. Now, my goal for the next 45 minutes to an hour is simple, to get you at least just as fizzed up about this stuff as I am. And if I can't, at least you'll get a PDH credit. And before we get into the plant breeding, ReadyMax, the dark green color index, and all the fun bits, I wanted to ground us in the purpose that guides the work we do here at PGG Wrights and Seeds. We enrich land, life, and people through seeds and science. And that purpose sits right here at the heart of everything that you'll hear today. All right, a little bit about me before we get into the science. I work across New Zealand and the odd international project in revegetation and erosion control. Most of my world sits between our plant breeders, our research centres, and the contractors out there trying to get vegetation established on some pretty unforgiving sites. I know a lot of you may have visited a project and gone, yep, this is going to be interesting. So for anyone who doesn't know me, grass is my jam. I'm also absolutely the person who will pull over during a road trip and look at a slope or a patch of vegetation, much to my wife's dismay. But really, that curiosity is what drives my work. My role is connecting the science, the genetics, the trials, the performance data with the practical realities of construction, soils, climate, and timelines. And that's exactly what today is about. Taking the breeding and research world and translating it into outcomes that actually stay on the ground. Before we get into the detail, this is a little video that I played in Fort Worth, but it will kind of translate. I guess it will just give you an overview of where a lot of this breeding and research is done here at the Kimihare Research Centre in Lincoln. I purposely left this here just so you can kind of see where a lot of this is done, but also the ReadyMax facility that I talk about is located in Copenhagen, Denmark, which I'll touch on a bit later as well. I'm not too sure if there'll be a lag or anything like that, but look, there's a lot of blue space between where you are and potentially Alabama, where Auburn Stormwater is, to here in New Zealand. But there's a lot of plant breeding that's done here and a lot of the R&D that's done here as well. I'm not too sure if you can see, but all these little green dots here on the right-hand side, they're what we call space plants. So I'll touch on that in a bit as well. And here's where we're heading today. Why sustainability matters, why genetics matter, how plant breeding actually works, ReadyMax, above ground and below ground, the DGCI, which is the dark green color index, Mediterranean germplasm, endophytes, GM versus GE, species selection, circular economy outcomes, and I'll finish off with a case study. Now let's kick off with sustainability. Erosion control today isn't just about stopping soil moving. It's about creating landscapes that are resilient and low input. And good vegetation relies on 3 levels of resilience: physical resilience, deep, fibrous, well-anchored roots that stabilize soil. Chemical resilience, lower input vegetation that cycles nutrients naturally. And a biological resilience, genetics that can handle drought, cold, poor soils, and repeated stress events. All of this aligns with a circular economy model. Reduce, reuse, and regenerate. Reduce the inputs you need, reuse nature's own processes, regenerate the landscape instead of constantly repairing it. The better the genetics, the lower the life cycle cost. I once had an engineer tell me, just put something green on it. Grass is grass, right? And my answer was, well, if grass is grass, then wine is wine. Whether it's $5 or $50. Two grasses can look identical on day one, but under pressure, their differences are enormous. Genetics decide who survives, who fails, and who costs you money later. Wrong genetics equals reseeding and erosion repairs and mobilization costs. Plant breeding is long-term science, usually a 10 to 12-year journey from first cross to commercial release. It starts with parents that have traits we want to stack: winter activity, root depth, persistence, establishment speed, stress tolerance, all of those which create thousands, sometimes millions of unique offspring. And as I touched on earlier, those space plants, here is an up close photo of it at the Kamihe Research Centre that we zoomed in on earlier. And most of those millions, thousands, sometimes millions of unique offspring sometimes don't make the cut. Actually, most of them don't make the cut. Only a tiny percentage combine the right traits for long-term resilient erosion control. Breeding builds plants that establish fast, root deeply, persist over time, and recover after stress. They also hold cover when the conditions turn ugly. This is the foundation for performance. This is why certified genetics matter, because this pipeline is expensive and ruthless. So all of those thousands, sometimes millions plants that you saw of those space plants, they all get narrowed down to just a few hundred. And that's another photo of the space plants that I highlighted earlier. I want to pause on this slide for a moment because it shows what it actually takes our plant breeders to create a new grass cultivar. From the first cross to commercial seed, you're looking at a process that takes around 10 years, sometimes longer, and honestly, you need more patience than the Dalai Lama to stick with it. The early years are spent screening individual plants, making controlled crosses, and narrowing thousands of offspring down to a tiny fraction worth pursuing. By years 4 and 5, they finally have enough seed to start proper field trials. And that's where we see which lines deliver on winter activity, drought tolerance, root depth, and persistence. And here's the part people never see. Some plants make it all the way to year 6 and 7 and then get scrapped because they don't hold up under tougher testing. A decade-long journey gone. That's how tough the selection pressure is. Then the survivors move into the seed production chain, nucleus, breeders, basic, to protect those genetics all the way through to commercial seed. And the whole process can cost over $1 million before a single bag has even reached the market. So when people say, why not just buy the cheapest seed? This slide answers that pretty quickly. You aren't just buying seed, you're buying a decade of scientific work from a dedicated breeding team. At the University of Copenhagen, we're able to use this tool called ReadyMax. ReadyMax is a world-leading tool for understanding drought performance. From above, ReadyMax looks like long controlled channels. Each channel contains different genotypes under the same moisture gradient. That means true side-by-side comparisons, identical drought conditions, fair screening, and massive throughput. It removes site variability and shows us which genetics generally hold up under stress. The real power of ReadyMax is underground. Below ground windows lets us literally watch roots grow real time during drought. With the camera capturing images as the roots develop, we can see which plants keep rooting deeper, which maintain fine branching, which stall early, and which build the stable structure we need for slope performance. ReadyMax gives us the ability to observe different species root systems live, which is incredible. Some plants quit early. Others kept driving roots deeper as the soils dried. Being able to watch those changes unfold in real time matched everything we'd suspected from years of field observations. Roots equals engineering. Roots aren't just biology, they're an engineering mechanism. Deeper, denser root systems increase soil shear strength, aggregate stability, infiltration, and erosion thresholds. That's why this tool is incredibly important. DGCI, the dark green color index, uses digital image analysis to measure greenness and canopy performance. With the DGCI drone imagery, we can see which plants stay green the longest, which continue photosynthesis during dry periods, subtle early stress signals, and how uniform a stand actually is. There are also fire risk benefits, and this is huge for fire-prone regions. As with climate change, we're seeing more and more wildfires. Plants that stay greener longer stay cooler, retain more moisture, and are less likely to become fuel. The DGCI helps us identify those genetics. ReadyMax shows the underground story, and the DGCI drone shows the above ground resilience. The photo here is from the 2017 Port Hills fires, which is right behind my house here in Christchurch. Mediterranean germplasm has been a major breakthrough. Much of this work was led by Dr. Alan Stewart in New Zealand. Mediterranean grasses evolved with cool, moist winters and hot, dry summers. They stay active when other grasses shut down. They establish in the cold, extend roots during winter, provide winter cover, handle summer drought effectively. The image on this slide shows a Haldrop machine which physically cuts and weighs yield plot by plot. That's how we quantify winter activity, real harvested biomass. In one winter trial, the soil temps around 4 to 5 degrees Celsius, that's 39 to 41 Fahrenheit, the temperate grasses barely grew. The Mediterranean lines put on measurable biomass. When the Haldrop came through at the end of winter, the difference was dramatic. Winter activity equals winter resilience. Endophytes are a naturally occurring fungi living inside the grass. It's effectively the plant's internal insurance policy. They help with drought tolerance, persistence, insect deterrence, stress recovery, and long-term slope cover. Images in this trial on a project where two areas were seeded with the same species, one certified with active endophytes and one uncertified. They looked identical early on. By month 9, the uncertified seeded area began thinning, insect pressure spiked, and the stand collapsed. The certified seeded area remained stable for years. Endophytes are living organisms, and if seed is stored poorly, the insurance policy disappears. That's why certified seed matters. Now let's talk about GM and GE. Two terms that often get thrown together, but are actually very different. GM, genetic modification, adds foreign genes. These are genes that would never naturally occur in the plant. They might come from bacteria, other plants, or entirely different species. That's why GM has traditionally been used for traits like herbicide tolerance or insect resistance. GE, gene editing, is completely different. GE doesn't add foreign DNA. Instead, it makes extremely precise edits to the plant's existing genes, like turning a gene off, adjusting a trait, or speeding up a natural mutation process that could have occurred anyway. Scientifically, GE is far closer to traditional breeding than GM. But in New Zealand, both GM and GE are regulated the same way under current law. So in practice, neither can be used outdoors, which means innovators lean heavily on advanced breeding, Mediterranean germplasm, endophytes, multi-species systems to achieve resilience without gene editing. The important thing is context. GM and GE are tools, not good or bad, but they need to fit the market, the regulatory landscape, and the level of social license in the region. The US and Australia operate differently to New Zealand, and those differences shape which technologies we use and what we can bring into real-world revegetation solutions. Species selection is still the backbone of successful revegetation, but it goes deeper than simply choosing the right species. You also need to choose the right type within that species and the right quality of seed. Let's start with the distinction between certified seed and uncertified seed. Certified seed guarantees the genetics are exactly what the label says. Purity and germination, endophyte levels are verified. Storage and handling have been controlled, and you get the full performance the plant was bred for. Uncertified seed is the complete opposite. You don't know the genetics, the age, the purity, the viability, and whether the endophyte is still alive, or even if the cultivar is what it claims to be. In erosion control, that's not just a gamble, and it's an expensive gamble once the establishment fails. A great example of this is perennial ryegrass. To the untrained eye, dwarf perennial ryegrass and agricultural perennial ryegrass look the same in the bag. But on a slope, they behave completely differently. Dwarf perennial ryegrass stays short, dense, and fine, and it forms a tight canopy, needs less mowing, holds soil well, and maintains cover longer. Whereas agricultural perennial ryegrass shoots upright. Faster growth habit, produces stems, and becomes stalky and opened when stressed. It's bred for grazing systems. Both are perennial ryegrass, but they are not interchangeable. That's why certification matters and why knowing your grasses matter even more. On any ESC project, species selection should always include the right species for the site, the right type of cultivar within that species, legumes for natural nitrogen, planning for ecological succession, and certified seed to ensure all of that actually works in the field. So the message here is simple. Know your grasses and trust certified seed. The difference between short-term cover, it's the difference between short-term cover and long-term resilience. Plants with purpose means vegetation that does more than just turn a site green. It means plants that actively support the landscape, support the soil, and support the ecosystems around them. The image you're looking at here is from our Kimehe Research Centre. A bumblebee feeding on a cornflower in the middle of a revegetation trial, and this is the point. When you choose the right genetics, you're not just establishing cover. You're building living systems that contribute back to the land. Purpose-built vegetation improves soil health, increases resilience to climate extremes, reduces long-term maintenance, supports pollinators and biodiversity, and stabilizes the land year after year. It becomes part of a functioning regenerative landscape instead of a short-term green bandage. And this loops directly back to our purpose as a business. We enrich land, life, and people through seeds and science. When we select the right species, the right genetics, and the right tools, we're not just growing grass, we're creating vegetation that strengthens the environment and supports the systems around it. I actually think I was missing a slide, but anyway, I'll continue on. Yeah, I did have a slide on sustainability. Anyway, we'll continue on. So I want to bring all of that science into a real world project, because breeding, seed quality, and species selection only matter if they solve practical problems. One of my favorite examples of this is the Southern Reservoir Spillway upgrade in Dunedin. This project was about much more than stabilizing soil. It was about protecting the water supply of an entire community. Dunedin is located on the east coast of the South Island of New Zealand. It's also the 6th largest city in New Zealand and, fun fact, home of the steepest residential road in the world, Baldwin Street, which has a 35% gradient. Also has the average high temperature of 17 degrees Celsius, which is 63 degrees Fahrenheit in summer, and 10 degrees Celsius, which is 50 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter. The reservoir itself dates back to the 1880s, and by 2019, the original spillway had 2 critical issues. First, it no longer had the hydraulic capacity required for modern dam safety standards. And second, there was active erosion threatening the embankment. Note, the capacity of the water reservoir is 260,000 cubic meters, or 68.7 million US gallons, or 104 Olympic swimming pools. Thought that would be a bit easier to visualize. The engineering requirement was substantial. Increase flow capacity from 1 cubic meters, which is 35.3 cubic feet per second, to 8 cubic meters. That's up to 282.5 cubic feet per second. Enough to safely pass a 1 in 100 AEP flood. So the annual exceedance probability flood. So 1 in 10,000 AEP probability flood. Now, normally, the instinctive engineering response is concrete, rip-rap, or hard armor. But in this case, we took a different path. A reinforced grass-lined spillway was selected. And this is where sustainability and the circular economy come alive. The grass solution came in at less than 50% of the cost of hard armor, while also delivering a greener living engineered system. This wasn't grass for aesthetics, this was grass for infrastructure. The success of this project came down to what we call the 5 fundamentals of successful revegetation and erosion control. And if anyone is familiar with Profile's fundamentals, we followed that framework. Understand the substrate, species selection, erosion control material, correct installation, and follow-up and maintenance. The first of the 5 fundamentals is one of the most overlooked in revegetation. And that's understanding your substrate. Before we selected any species, we tested the soil material that would actually form the spillway profile. The results were encouraging overall, but importantly, they identified low phosphorus and potassium. Phosphorus is a key nutrient for root development. And now this is where sustainable thinking matters. Instead of over-applying broad fertilizer, we corrected only the deficiencies we knew would limit establishment. Those nutrients were then integrated directly into a hydraulic erosion control application alongside the mulch and seed. This is a great example of how the circular economy mindset, precision inputs, no waste, and maximum biological return. Because even the best genetics can also express their potential if the substrate allows them to. Fundamental number 2, species selection. This is where plant breeding really drove the outcome. Dunedin has a cool climate, so only cool season grasses made sense. What's powerful here is that 3 of the 4 cultivars were bred within 300 kilometers or 186 miles of the project site. That local adaptation is exactly what we've been discussing today. The ryegrass selected had proven germination down to 5 degrees Celsius or 41 degrees Fahrenheit, exceptional winter growth and strong endophyte expression for insect resistance. The fine fescues and brown top brought persistence, density, and regional adaptation from Canterbury and Central Otago regions or collections. Next came the erosion control system itself. The system was to use a hybrid approach, a permanent turf reinforcement mat infilled with hydraulically applied engineered wood fiber mulch. This system is known as the green armor system, and this gave immediate erosion protection, intimate seed to soil contact, and a permanent reinforcement layer once roots knitted through the matrix. The 4th fundamental is correct installation. And this is where science meets craftsmanship. I often say genetics can't rescue poor workmanship. You can have the perfect species blend, the best endophyte package, and the ideal soil profile. But if the installation isn't executed properly, the system won't perform. For this spillway, strict adherence to the manufacturer's installation specifications was absolutely critical. The turf reinforcement mat was installed first, creating the permanent structural matrix. That was then followed by the hydraulic infill of engineered wood fiber mulch, which carried the seed and fertilizer package directly into the open matrix. The specified application rates were highly deliberate: 3,900 kgs a hectare of the hydraulic mulch, or that's almost 3.5 pounds per acre. 400 kgs per hectare, or near around 350 pounds per acre of seed, and 200 kgs per hectare, or 180 pounds per acre of DAP, fertilizer, diammonium phosphate. Those numbers matter because in living infrastructure, application consistently drives uniform establishment, root knitting, and long-term hydraulic performance. And this is why the contractor capability was just as important as the product selection. The fifth and final fundamental is where a lot of projects either lock in success or quietly begin to unravel. Follow-up inspections and maintenance are absolutely essential. This site was inspected regularly during the establishment phase to make sure the vegetation was tracking the way we expected. At around 8 weeks, we made a targeted fertilizer recommendation to accelerate canopy closure and root mass development because the spillway needed to become operational within a defined timeframe. The fertilizer strategy was using a controlled release NPK blend with 70% upfront nitrogen available and 30% released slowly over time. Again, this is precision input management, enough nutrition to drive rapid establishment, but controlled so we won't risk wasting nutrients created or unnecessary runoff. Once the vegetation was fully established, the spillway was handed back to Dunedin City Council. They also managed the long-term maintenance required, which became very simple: routine mowing, and that's the beauty of the system. The complexity sits in the design and establishment phase, but once mature, the assets behave like self-reinforcing green infrastructure. Establishment and the long-term outcome. The results have been as expected. At 5 weeks, the spillway already had strong vegetative establishment. And by years 2, the system had matured into a fully integrated, reinforced living spillway. Most importantly, the spillway has now been operational for several years, safely returned to the council for standard maintenance, and that's circular economy thinking in action: lower embodied carbon, lower capital costs, and a living asset that improves with time. Remember, what was a small, insufficient old concrete spillway is now this. This project proves that when plant breeding, species adaptation, endophyte technology, and smart installation comes together, vegetation stops being a decoration and becomes critical infrastructure. Let's wrap up with key messages. Genetics matter. Winter-active germplasm improves resilience. Endophytes add internal insurance. New Zealand builds resilience without GM. Certified seed reduces risk. And know your grasses. Above all, plant with purpose. And to bring it back full circle, everything we've talked about supports a circular economy model. Reduce, reuse, and regenerate, where vegetation becomes a self-sustaining system. Side note, that bottom photo was taken 4.5 years after the first seeding, which used a biotic soil medium followed by a flexible growth medium. And there's the Kaikoura earthquakes, which is just north of where I am here. And it's a pretty good showcase of long-term sustainability. And in true grass nerd fashion, I actually pulled over with my wife and took that photo on the bottom on the way to my honeymoon. Now, I know I am ahead of time, so I'll wrap that up there because I actually went over this presentation yesterday and then there's a couple slides missing, and one of them was around sustainability. So apologies on my behalf, but I thought I'd open up here for questions or anything like that. So yeah, sorry about that, Matt. I was aiming for around that 45-minute mark, and then I was looking at the time, I was going, oh no, but yeah, there was actually a couple of slides missing, and I kind of went over this last night as well. So yeah.
Well, thank you, Joe, very much for your time and your presentation. That was absolutely wonderful. Very much appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. And yeah, I didn't notice any missing slides. If it makes you feel any better, I thought it was a great
Yeah,
presentation.
I clicked on it. I was like, what? Where's the sustainability one gone? Anyway, we'll just roll with it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
good job.
do appreciate it. So
Um,
yeah.
so we're going to open the floor to the audience. If anybody has any questions, there should be. It looks like somebody has already put a question into the Q&A chat box. Joe, can you see the Q&A?
Uh, I need to stop sharing this and then hold on. And then I should be able to make this bigger. Bear with me while I navigate technology. Uh, Chat box. Oh, there's a few. All right.
So the chat box, that's separate, but there's a Q&A right at the bottom. On my screen, it's next to raise, or it's next to share and captions at the bottom
Yep,
of the
gotcha.
screen.
Yeah. So
But
the long-term maintenance is still going now, and that just involved just regular mowing. They're not even fertilizing it now. So it's a really self-sufficient, it's really a self-sustaining kind of yeah, reinforced spillway. So it handled the weight of mowers and machinery and things like that. So yeah, imagine that came down to the compaction limits that was required prior to having the reinforcement mat installed and then having it hydraulically applied. So yeah, thanks, Simon.
Joe, I was actually curious, while we're waiting for anybody else who might have questions, on that slide that you were discussing between genetic modification and genetic editing. You mentioned that it was regulated for outdoor use, and I'm curious if you could share a little more about that, the differences between GM and GE, and any sort of I guess issues that you've run into in your line of work with those being treated the same.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one because I don't look at both of them neither good or bad. I think I look at it as a tool, and it just depends on your local regulatory environment. Just here in New Zealand, they're viewed quite similar. So we're unable to do GM or GE, but I know in the US both are heavily used. So and because if you think about I guess, yeah, if you think about the land area size is getting smaller and smaller as well, while food and that's required, like agriculture, for example, is required for food sources to feed the world, and the population is increasing day by day as well. We're needing to feed billions, and that land area size is getting smaller. So we're needing to think about how we're going to be smarter in farming. And I think the likes of GE and GM is a tool there to be able to increase yields and increase food production and things like that for the growing population as that area size to be able to farm is getting smaller. So not too sure if I answered your question correctly there, but I just know in New Zealand we're regulated a lot more heavier than what it is in the rest of the world. So yeah, like I said, I guess yeah, one is inserting external kind of modification, whereas one is actually just editing its current DNA to try and speed up the process of establishment and things like that. But that's almost a whole topic in itself, right? The GE and GM, but it's yeah, like I look at it as not good or bad. I just think it's a tool that I think, if anything, we might need to start really relying more and more on as the global population increases. So yeah, yeah, really good question there though, Matt.
All right, we will give folks another minute or so here to ask any questions they might have. While I still have everybody, I want to remind them that you do get a professional development hour for attending this TigerStream webinar. To get that PDH, it'll be sent through an automated email coming from me, and it should come 2 days from now. So just hold tight after this webinar is completed. Keep your eyes on your inbox, and 2 days from now, you should be receiving instructions for downloading that PDH. This webinar is also recorded, so if in the future you want to reference back to Joe's presentation, or if you want to share it with anybody, give us a couple of days, but we will upload it onto our YouTube account. So you can just go on to youtube.com and type in Auburn Stormwater, and this TigerStream and every previous TigerStream that we've done is on our YouTube account. It's looking like most of the questions have been answered. Joe, if you don't mind, in the chat, sharing your email with the audience members in case anybody does have any questions. I also want to take this time to plug our Stormwater Week that is coming up here in Auburn, Alabama. So if you're going to be in the area, May 12th through 14th, we are hosting our hands-on erosion control installer workshop, and then also our stormwater field day, both of which are awesome training events that you can also get some professional development hours. If you're curious about that, you can email me. My email, you should have that. It's been attached to the Zoom. And really looking forward to seeing anybody there. So I guess we'll close it with that. Joe has shared his email address in the webinar chat, so feel free to write that down, anybody. And thank you all for joining us today. Joe, thank you very much for sharing your expertise, and we appreciate it.
All right. No, thank you. Thank you, Matt. And yeah, thank you everyone who tuned in. So yeah, really do appreciate the time to talk about grass. Grass is my jam. So love it. Hey, all the best for that event in May as well. That sounds amazing. So really appreciate what you guys do for the industry and things like that. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Everybody, have a good
Thanks.
day.
See ya.